Hey everyone, and welcome to this explainer. Okay, so have you ever stopped to wonder if your personal history, the actual story of who you are, might literally be written right there in your blood? It sounds wild, right? Well, today we are diving deep into the absolutely fascinating science of inherited trauma. We're going to explore how our bodies might actually be holding on to the past in ways that science is really just now beginning to decode.
So here's the big question. Can we actually inherit the traumas and even the survival skills of our ancestors? I mean, it kind of sounds like science fiction, but this is the exact mystery we're unraveling right now. Just think about it for a second. Think about those totally random, irrational fears you might have, or maybe those split-second survival instincts that just instantly kick in when you're stressed. Where do those actually come from? We've basically always been taught that we just learn these behaviors, right? Either through our own life experiences, or we pick them up from our immediate environment. But what if that's literally only half the story? What if the source material we're looking at today is dead on, and those instincts were actually passed down to you, fully formed, from generations of people you never even met?
All right, let's jump right into Section 1, the mystery of genetic memory.
This concept fundamentally changes how we think about inheritance. Like, we all know we inherit physical traits, right? Eye color, height, maybe the shape of your nose. But genetic memory introduces this mind-bending theory of inherited past experiences. We are talking about the profound, world-altering things our ancestors went through being carried inside of us right now. The source material directly points to the idea that it's not just basic physical building blocks getting passed down the family tree. It's the actual physiological impact of what those ancestors lived through. It's absolutely incredible. It kind of forces us to look at our family history not just as, a timeline of names and dates, but as a completely active ingredient in our current biology.
Moving on to Section 2, DNA as a living archive. So how does this actually work? Well, the absolutely crucial mechanism at play here relies on something called epigenetic markers. According to the research, these are the biological tools that basically make inherited experiences possible. And I love the phrasing used in the source material here. They describe it as a living archive. Now, an archive isn't just some dusty, forgotten room. A living archive means it is active, it's totally responsive. These epigenetic markers carry actual, literal chemical imprints of past events. That means when our ancestors faced something truly monumental, it didn't just end when the event was over. No, it actually left a physical, chemical stamp on their genes, a stamp that was carefully filed away in this biological archive and passed right down the line to you and me.
This right here is a massive paradigm shift. For literally decades, science viewed DNA as this static instruction code, kind of like a fixed manual printed in ink that you could just never change or rewrite. But the source material completely shatters that idea, revealing DNA as a living, dynamic archive. It's entirely capable of receiving new chemical imprints based on really intense environmental factors and life experiences, which means your genetic code is not just some read-only document. Actually, scratch that, it's more like a living ledger that's constantly recording the absolute most intense moments of your family's history.
Okay, so what exactly leaves these kinds of marks? Well, the source highlights two incredibly intense triggers: ancestral starvation and raw survival instincts. Think about the sheer, intense biological stress of a famine. The body is literally pushed to its absolute limits just trying to stay alive, right? Your cells are desperately adapting to this total lack of nutrients. The research shows us that an event of that magnitude doesn't just fade away after a good meal. It leaves a permanent chemical imprint on those epigenetic markers. And the exact same thing goes for high-stakes survival situations. Escaping predators, enduring some brutal winter, running from extreme danger. The massive biological reactions required to survive that kind of threat leave a lasting signature. It basically tells us that the hardest days your ancestors ever faced left a biological trace that is still echoing in our modern world today.
That brings us to Section 3, Biology Meets Psychology.
There's this one quote that really stands out. Inherited fears are cellular echoes. Wow, that completely reframes everything we're looking at. When we experience those seemingly random anxieties or unexplainable fears, psychology usually tries to trace them back to our childhood, right? We look for something that happened to us. But this research, it suggests we might need to look much, much further back. Your fear might literally be a cellular echo, just a reverberation of an ancient survival instinct literally bouncing through the generations until it reaches you. It's a total game changer for how we view human emotion. What feels like a weird psychological hurdle today could actually be a deeply ingrained biological warning system, echoing from a threat that passed centuries ago. Let's actually map this out chronologically so we can really picture it. Way back in past centuries, you have this initial trigger, something massive like ancestral starvation, which creates a super severe biological response. Then, over the intervening generations, that trauma isn't just forgotten. No, it travels. It moves as those cellular echoes we talked about, carried right along by epigenetic markers inside that living archive. And finally, that chain brings it right up to our doorstep in the present day, where it actively influences modern human behavior. It is wild to think about. An event that happened hundreds of years before you were even a thought is directly connected by this unbroken chain of biology to the very way you act right now.
All right, final stretch. Section 4, Reshaping the Modern Blueprint. The source material outlines a really clear progression for how we need to understand this whole connection. First, by analyzing transgenerational trauma, we start to look at the pain and the extreme survival conditions of the past as active biological catalysts. They aren't just stories, they're triggers. Through that lens, we can literally observe how those past experiences physically reshape our biological blueprint. And once that fundamental, core blueprint is altered, we clearly see how it steps in to govern modern human behavior. It's this incredibly seamless, unbroken flow of past trauma becoming a present-day reality.
And I really want you to notice the specific terminology used here. It says governing modern human behavior. It doesn't just say influencing or kind of suggesting. It says governing. The physical reshaping of our biological blueprint through this transgenerational trauma has a real directing, controlling effect on how we operate every single day. The experiences totally locked away in our living archive, they dictate our stress responses, our gut instincts, and our most deeply held fears. It's a pretty profound realization to find out that the past is literally sitting right there in the driver's seat of modern human existence.
So, this all brings us to a pretty challenging realization, doesn't it? Are your daily choices truly your own, or are they just cellular echoes of your ancestors? Based on everything we've unpacked in this explainer, from the living archive of our DNA right down to the chemical imprints of ancient survival, it's a question that seriously demands some thought. The next time you feel a sudden instant kick in or a deep, unexplainable fear washing over you, you kind of have to stop and ask yourself, wait, is this really me, or is this just the echo of an ancestor who survived just so that I could be standing here today? I really hope this explainer has completely shifted how you view your own biology and your family history. Thanks so much for hanging out and learning with me today, and hey, keep questioning the blueprint.